Welcome to the Octiv Sweat Equity Podcast, a show designed exclusively for gym owners and fitness enthusiasts like you. I'm your host, Mark Forsey. As business owners and busy people, we live high-stress, high-pressure lives, and it's becoming more and more important to make sure that we are proactively and deliberately managing our stress and anxiety levels. Today, I'm talking to Leigh Bosch, who is the founder of House of Yoga. We're going to discuss her story as well as how one can use yoga and your general fitness and movement practice to manage stress and create balance in your life. Leigh, thank you so much for coming through. I'm looking forward to our chat. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your career and the impact that yoga has had on it so far?
Can I rewind a little bit and maybe give a little bit of context and start at the beginning?
Yeah.
So if I think back to when I was a child and growing up, I didn't know it then, but and hindsight is wonderful, but suffered from quite a lot of anxiety and even depression at times. And, that just arose because of my makeup and because of, I think, growing up and puberty and just figuring things out is quite daunting for any kid. My parents also went through a divorce, so there was a lot of change and uncertainty in life, and how I dealt with that was to retreat into, then it was dancing. And I danced from a very young age, mostly classical ballet. And I found solace and peace and real serenity and expression through dancing. That was one side. And then also retreated a little bit into the other role of the academic. So really, put a lot of emphasis on my studies and that kind of thing. So in some ways I was a little bit of a recluse. But
it sounds like you were finding healthy outlets,
Definitely the dancing and probably schoolwork gave me structure and certainty and stability. And after school, I decided rather than going the dancing route to go to university. I was lucky enough to go to university. And in my final year of university of joint honors, I really, really wanted to do well. And, I had never really dealt with the anxiety and depression. And I was, literally a nervous wreck because of all of this pressure and just wanting to do well. And so I started looking into different avenues and had heard that yoga potentially could help with calming and finding a more peaceful way of being. So I started doing some yoga classes outside of university, and it was a group of older, more mature women, and it was hatha yoga, so it was quite slow and holding poses for longer, strength building, but also so wonderful for the nervous system. And that literally developed into a lifelong relationship.
Awesome.
But it was kind of love at first sight, but not lust at first sight. So it was a relationship that had a deeper foundation and then served, obviously, for where I am now. After university, I did have the chance to dance for a small company back in Durban, where I'm from, and that was mostly educational work, but also realized that I didn't want to do it as a career. And then after that, decided to move overseas to London when they still were giving working holiday visas out.
Yes.
And I was offered a role in Deloitte. So went full on corporate. And I was in London and with Deloitte for 10 years. Yoga was always there to provide a bit of calm and serenity, help really support the nervous system in quite a high pressured working environment, a fast paced city. And after 10 years, I got to a point where I felt I really needed change. I didn't see myself in the same role career-wise for the rest of my life. And I felt the call to come back home to South Africa and move to Cape Town. And I had been interested in the renewable energy sector and was offered a role in a local renewable energy company. And that wasn't starting for a few months. And I'd been thinking for quite a while of doing my yoga teacher training. So this was the perfect opportunity. And I did that and started at the renewable energy company, but outside of work hours started teaching part-time just to gain a little bit of experience. And I really, really loved it. And it was definitely more in line with, I guess, who I was and what I feel is my purpose and what motivates me. And
so not the full corporate thing.
No, I think there's nothing wrong with corporate, and I'm so thankful for what I learned there. It really actually provided the foundation,
of course,
financially as well as, I guess, professionally, for my own business
and what was to come.
But with yoga, I just felt I could potentially make a more direct impact on people's lives and support them if they, especially if they're working in corporate or in, life just in general is quite high pressurized these days
100%.
And fast paced. So,
it's fascinating because most of the people that I speak to in our, call it studio, fitness business, micro gym owner space, they didn't actually start their career in fitness or in physical education. It was, most of the people that I speak to come from corporate, and they learn a whole bunch of really important skills and experience and so on. And it does, like,
Definitely.
Myself included, if I hadn't done my early stage of my career, that really put me in good stead for what was to come. But I just want to rewind to something I think is really cool. And the way you spoke about anxiety, depression leading you to the point where you started doing yoga, and it wasn't like love at first sight. It took time to build. It sounds like there was a lot of, there's a really good why behind it, right? Because in terms of yoga as a practice, I think from my knowledge, the way yoga started or its origins in the Eastern world is actually quite different to how the Western world practices.
Definitely.
And I personally like both. I wanted maybe just to find out a little bit more from your perspective of what is yoga? What is yoga? And what is the difference between the origins of yoga and what we see in the Western world? And,
I think you've just really touched on how rich the practice of yoga is. And I think the main reason, in my opinion, for that is that it started out as a philosophy, or philosophies, and have evolved over a few thousand years. So it already has that history and that longevity. And I would say, to put it in a nutshell, it's really a science of living. And yes, I think especially in the last century and this century, when yoga was mainly introduced to the West, we've definitely come to it from more of a physical perspective. We know of the physical posture practice, the asanas, and I think because in the West we've been attached and we've placed so much emphasis on the physical body and the external experience, or visual. That had, I think initially that is what attracted us to it, and
it's another type of workout.
It is
Kind of,
exactly. It can, just another form of exercise.
Yes.
It has, I think, the physical part of yoga has developed into, if it's taught correctly, I think into a conscious movement practice, which, I mean, is wonderful and starts to speak to the whole being. And I think why I and yourself and so many people are attracted to it is because it doesn't just speak to the body. It goes so much deeper and acknowledges that we aren't just the body or only the body, and there is the mind, there's the body, there's potentially something deeper. And yoga, which comes from the Sanskrit word yuk, meaning to yoke or bring into union, and there are a lot of translations of what that can relate to, but I quite like the this concept of bringing into union all of us, the body, the mind, the soul, or a sense that there's something deeper or bigger than all of us. Or bringing into union or yoking our humanness, our smaller selves, accepting that and embracing that and being grateful for this wonderful life that we are here to experience, but yoking that to the deeper self, the bigger self, the higher truth.
Yeah, like one of the most beautiful yoga sessions that I've ever done was a yin yoga. And I'm not new to meditation, but what I loved about it was that it was an active meditation. That, like, by the end of it, you feel so great and much more grounded. And that session actually opened my eyes, it was a while back, to a different side of yoga, because I started as a physical practice. I went and I tried out a power yoga session back in the day, and I was like, this is awesome. Heated room. I've just gotten probably the most intense workout of my life.
Completely.
But then, you see the other side of it. And nowadays, you would know I come from a martial arts and CrossFit background, so it's this high intensity, masculine, well, it's not actually masculine, but it's lifting weights, etc. And I've always tried to balance it out with yoga. And of late, in the last 2 months, I've been doing pretty much only yoga because we've got a yoga studio 2 minutes from our house.
So convenient.
So convenient. So it's just been trying to get some movement every day. And I've loved how I've been able to mix like power yoga sessions with just plain vinyasa with yin. And it gives me the best of everything. And what I've found is it's made me much less stressed. So what you were saying earlier really speaks to me. What is it about yoga? And I think we can all jump to conclusions, but what is it about yoga that you think, if I ask you as a specialist, someone who's experienced in it, that actually has that effect on our nervous system to help us be grounded and calm?
I think so. If I just run through almost the same process that happens almost every time I step onto the mat, I don't know what it is, but it's this intention, even if it's not, completely conscious, but to step into the space, into your body, and I almost feel instantly this dropping down from my mind, because I'm extremely cerebral. I think most of us are, and our professional lives, exacerbate that, and social media, we processing, thinking, and we don't realize how attached we are and how embroiled we are in our thought patterns and in the ego. Just really, so we just spend so much time in our mind and in the brain. And then coming into the body just allows you to drop down out of that thinking mind into the intelligence of the body, and to start to listen to the body and to hear intelligence from other incredibly wise and intuitive spaces in the body, the heart, the gut. And I think simply the act of being aware and conscious in the body and how you're moving it and how you're breathing, and then noticing that actually I've spent probably most of my life since I was a child, as soon as we start to feel the pressures of growing up and then the working world, we naturally just begin to constrict our breath, but we're so unaware of it. Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit now, because if I think back to when I first started yoga, I remember feeling almost high after class, and that was literally because I was breathing properly.
You
and
were
I was
oxygenated.
I was oxygenating to the brain. And we learn to breathe properly again, right to the low dantian area, and you probably know that from martial arts, below the navel towards the pelvis, to fill the lungs. Never mind all the various breathing practices that you can bring in as well, that can also, the nervous system can go into overstimulation and then understimulation, whether we're burnt out, depending on your makeup.
Yeah.
So when you're feeling really sluggish, then the breathing practices to stimulate and energize. And then when you're feeling overstimulated and over anxious, we're breathing practices to calm down. And then all of that to potentially prepare the body, and the mindful meditation, which is the ultimate balancer of the nervous system. Going into we're not doing anything, which is so counter to
everything else,
to life today. When we feel like we have to be switched on, doing. Now you can just be in the body, in the moment. And yes, there might be thoughts and there might be emotion, but sometimes we can find solace in that place underneath, that constant. And to know that we can find that within means we stop looking for everything outside of us, the answers externally. It's very much this coming home to self.
Yes, that's beautiful. Like in terms of even just the breathing and connecting the breathing with the movement, it is a meditation in itself.
A moving meditation.
Yeah.
Similar to kata.
Yeah.
In martial art, obviously the Eastern physical practices are there's so many themes.
100%. And even, any exercise, especially, any exercise I think is a really good way or one of the ways to deal and manage with stress and anxiety. Definitely. And so on. The thing with yoga though is that it's quiet. It's quieter, and it's helped me a lot because my life is very fast paced and high pressure, and that's like the hour of the day that is dedicated to me and to quiet, where I also find quite refreshing that actually there isn't really a performance element to it. No. So there isn't that pressure of I'm trying to lift X weight, or I'm trying to go for whatever time. It's almost just you're just trying to have a good practice for the day, and you're not competing with yourself or anyone else, which is quite refreshing.
It's such a relief. It's such a relief. And, it's a very personal, intimate practice. I was listening to another podcast the other day, and they were talking about happiness, and they got into they were speaking about mirrors and how, this infatuation about how we look on the on the outside really does affect, a sense of happiness and contentment within. And that's one thing, in the dancing world, we grew up with that, mirrors around the studio, so you could really see what you do. There's definitely a time and a place.
Of course.
But what I love about yoga is that you really work from the inside out, and it's all about how it feels on the inside, and that becomes, an expression and a movement outwards. And it's one of the reasons we don't have mirrors at House of Yoga, and also the fact that you then are you're less likely to focus on what other people are doing. You really can go inside, and even when you're practicing in a group class, it's just, there's this wonderful collective energy that carries you through the practice. But you don't have to, you might not even realize that there are other people around you.
100%.
And I think, some people might think it's quite a selfish and insular form of practice, but we're doing the work on the inside, and you're doing the work on the mat to, really in view of self-development and self-growth. And one of the wonderful things I find with yoga is that, it's every time you step on your mat, you're almost creating this microcosm of the external world to then play with internally. You are, you're playing with your boundaries, nudging your edges, noticing how you speak to yourself. Can I be more compassionate? Can I challenge myself more? Can I find comfort in the discomfort? Can I find flow and effortless effort? And all of that is not just to stay on the mat. We're doing that to then take that with us when we leave the mat and into our relationships with others, loved ones, friends, colleagues, our environment even. It's very much, you're doing the work so that you can be a better person.
A better human.
A better human.
100%. Yeah.
In the world.
I also always find it funny how much I wobble is a direct reflection of how busy my mind is.
That's a wonderful thing to notice. I know.
So I wanted to talk about yoga as a holistic practice as opposed to yoga as a complement to a different. So if you are doing CrossFit or boxing or whatever, and you use yoga to balance that out, and build strength and stability and etc., as opposed to only doing yoga. And how would you kind of describe the two being different?
I think it goes back to what we were chatting about earlier, in that for me, yoga is really an all-being practice, and it takes into account body, mind, and it's, it just is so rich and brings in a philosophy as well. Not everyone wants that. I must say, I also used to, do yoga as a complement to other forms of physical activity. And really, now that it has become my career as well, I really only do yoga. And I do find that it's enough, actually.
Yes.
Yoga itself, there's not only one form or school of yoga, so many different styles. Again, if we're basing it on the nervous system, and you feel like, I'm feeling really sluggish and down, and I need a bit of stimulation, I need some energizing, then there are the stronger forms of yoga. There's vinyasa, ashtanga. There is hot yoga if you want to add heat and extra intensity, which is, it's a wonderful mind work. If anything, it's it's harder on the mind than it is the body, withstanding that heat. If you feel very overstimulated and you need to calm the nervous system, then there are the slower forms, hatha, yin, and restorative that you mentioned earlier. So wonderful, just holding a shape.
So there is actually, it's a whole practice that you don't actually need to combine it with anything. If you manage to listen to what you need and actually adapt your practice to that. What would you suggest for beginners? Because I often talk to like my friends about it, mainly my guy friends, and they've never tried a class, and I think it's the most daunting thing ever. Yeah.
I know if.
So is there like something that beginners could do to try it out and kind of ease into it?
I don't know why yoga seems to have this rep that exactly beginners are very reticent and quite shy to try it out, and maybe social media plays a big role in that, because what's displayed on social media, it's often people in these weird and wonderful and crazy advanced poses, which generally take years and years and years of practice, like anything. And even then, I think the deeper you get in your practice, the more you realize that isn't the goal.
Yeah.
And if I had a rand, maybe I should say a dollar or a pound, given the exchange rate. But if I had a rand for every time someone, a beginner said, I can't do yoga, I'm not flexible.
Yeah.
Or I'm not flexible, I would be a very wealthy person.
Yeah.
How with starting something afresh, I don't know why we feel like we have to be completely competent at it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because you never are. It's a practice, and we start with the foundations. And it is it's a lifelong practice as well. But like anything, I would start with 1 or 2 classes a week. Go to a beginner or foundational class. I know guys especially find that difficult to start with the basics, because they feel that they're admitting to, I don't know, weakness, which is ridiculous. The thing, most people actually pick it up, the foundations, really quickly, and you can move from there. And it's really just committing to 1 or 2 classes a week, and coming back to that philosophy of being comfortable in the uncomfortable. It will feel quite strange at first, especially if you're completely new to yoga, if you haven't ever done movement.
So get over your ego and try being a beginner for a day or 2, and
and then you realize actually that's something we try to employ every single time you come to the mat, is that beginner's mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Because otherwise we're coloring the experience, the present moment experience, with expectation, and like I've been doing yoga for this long, now I should be at this point. But when we employ a beginner's mind, you allow the magic of the moment and experience to unfold.
You never hear anybody saying that person's really good at yoga. It's not like one of those things that you strive to, you know what I mean? It's just like your own practice.
And I think it harps back to that really wonderful point you made earlier about it's a very personal practice. And it doesn't mean you don't have to have goals or want to achieve certain things, attain certain poses and certain shapes. It's fun. As humans, I think we need to be challenged, and it's fun to challenge the body and the mind. I mean, that's how we grow and
Yes.
develop. But I think when we start attaching and making that the be all and end all, then we've lost the point.
100%. So I think we could geek out
No.
about the practice for a long time, but tell us a little bit about House of Yoga. So how it started, what your offering is, how many teachers you have, and how you structure things, and so on.
So House of Yoga is, I'd probably call it a micro boutique yoga studio school. We opened in September 2018. And for me, it was mostly about the space, about providing a safe, a welcoming space, a home that people could come to learn yoga, to practice yoga, to find comfort and ease in their own bodies, and to take control of their well-being and health. Because, more and more, I think we're realizing there's not much we can control in this world, and the world is so uncertain. It's very tumultuous, but there are certain things you can do. Excuse me. And we can, up to a point, we can take charge of our well-being. And we have, I think there's 7 teachers in total, wonderful teachers. And I really value the variety and the different energies that each individual teacher brings. Diversity and variety was always really important to me. Our general class structure is we offer a morning class and 2 in the evening, because generally people have a little bit more time after work.
Yeah.
And then 1 morning class on the weekends. I think quite a nice variety. We have an absolute beginners class, and then a couple of other beginner-friendly classes, but then more general level classes. Nice mix between more dynamic and stronger practices, but then also the slower yin and restorative. Because I think, really it is about balance. And I think we need balance in the class schedule as well.
Yeah.
And we really try and encourage our members to find balance in their practice, to, like you, explore the different styles. Because it really does, help to invite more equanimity, obviously in your practice, but internally as well.
We've been working together for a few years, during which time there's been ups and downs in economies and pandemics and so on. So obviously, as a business owner in any kind of business, you have a stressful career. How do you manage your kind of stress levels and try and achieve that balance that obviously everyone is trying to attain?
Wow, it's definitely, it's a work in progress, I think, and it's a day-to-day, moment-to-moment experience. Luckily, I find a lot of, I would say I get so much and a lot of grounding and stress management through actually teaching yoga. It is incredibly grounding. It takes you out of yourself, really, because now you are holding space for others. So it really takes you away from that little you and that voice in your head that is, that really is the stressor. And then making sure that I also have a regular practice. I don't practice personally as much as I'd like to. A lot of that is involved in preparing for my classes, but then I do attend regular class outside of the studio, so that's quite nice to go to another space, a beautiful space in town.
Okay. In your preparation for the classes and like setting up your flows, and does that involve actually doing a practice on your own?
Yes. So I probably do get in quite a lot of the physical activity.
Yeah.
It probably may have not come out correctly, but it's so instead of, I guess, going and practicing
Yes.
individually and doing a pure practice, just for me, it's generally in view of teaching. So that's why it is nice to go somewhere else
follow
and do
someone else's instruction.
Yeah. Which is a wonderful break.
Yeah.
But no, so prepping for classes, I will actually prepare, maybe make some notes, but then practice in the body, because I guess, you're wanting to share your physical experience and connect to your members on the same, often it's on the same level. They'll be feeling or can relate to certain things that you would have felt. And you can only really teach what you know.
Yeah.
You know.
You want to taste your own medicine as well.
Yeah.
I've always found it fascinating how like a yoga teacher will take you through an entire class and have this entire sequence in his or her mind and not make any mistakes and know when to say right and when to say left. It's pretty insane. Like I don't think I would be able to.
Do you know, I think they're probably making a lot more, I wouldn't say mistakes, but
than people
realize. But what I love is just, it's so nice. I've definitely learned to stop taking myself as seriously, and to also just to relax a little and know that your members are not expecting perfection all the time, and that they're okay if something goes wrong or you forget to do the same thing on the other side, up to a point. We've got to be professional, and people are paying for an experience and for knowledge and expertise. So, but if you mess up a little bit, people are not gonna. And actually, if you acknowledge it, it just makes it.
It's normal.
It's normal.
Yeah.
I think though, I'm very thankful for my dancing background. I think that has definitely helped in terms of remembering sequences and being able to mirror, left and right, and that played a fantastic role.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you ever miss the stability of working for someone?
Such a good question. They are, and especially during the more challenging times, when we went through COVID.
Yeah.
And House of Yoga was really only just over a year old. And we were all thrust into this pandemic.
Yeah.
I think we were very lucky that we were a smaller studio, really. But and even since COVID, I think things are more up and down and less stable. People are far more wary or cognizant of how they spend their time and their money. The economy worldwide and hugely here in South Africa has taken such a downturn, and people are feeling it. And things like extramurals or can be seen as a luxury. You will always get those who, they know that this works for them as bringing stability and structure as a priority in their life, and people will prioritize that. But no, we're in, I think most businesses, or if you have your own business, the ups and downs from a financial perspective are very challenging, and But for me, I always have to weigh it up with the other pros, and neither is better or worse than the other.
Yeah.
They both have their pros and cons. For me, I really value being able to structure to a point how I spend my time.
Yes.
That is, for me, freedom of having one's own schedule in some ways is incredibly important and valuable. And I'm so lucky that I have that to a point. Obviously, outside of a certain class schedule and private client schedule.
Yeah. But you choose to do those things.
I choose, And every now and again I'm like, oh, wow, it would be so wonderful to know that a certain check is coming through at the end of the month. But, and I must say, I've learned so much about myself, and, as all of us have had to, really dig deep and go into those wells of resilience.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I can't even compare it to some people's situations at all.
Oh, of course.
I'm incredibly lucky, but
100%. It's a good quality problem, but it's hard, and it's so funny. I asked you this question because you did the whole Deloitte thing before, and I know my highs are incredibly high and my lows are quite low. And there have been moments where you wonder, like, would it have just been easier if?
Always,
but
you always
moments
have that.
And it's all perspective, because I also know people during the pandemic who just got retrenched. So it's like it can actually,
more and more. I think we are realizing that there's pretty much virtually nothing that we can control, and where we thought there was stability and structure in society and in the working world, we are going through such immense change and transformation, hopefully. But things are being rewritten, and people are forging new ways, and we have to create our own stability and sense of structure in the ways that feels right for each of us.
And like the impact that you have on your world, on the world and the people around you. I always see that as like, as long as we do our part to impact the people around us, and that kind of drives us to do what we do. It's so important.
So important. I think that that actually, going back to the your question about, do you wish you could go back to corporate? And we all, each of us, I think, is here not necessarily to do one thing and to have one purpose, but to find, for me, being able to, in some way, I guess, serve, and this has become quite a new age thing and quite popular. But the huge give back from, I think, doing something that you feel is in some way serving, or at least helping people maybe to somehow find a little bit more ease and comfort and peace and calm in a very chaotic, turbulent life. It does bring an enormous sense of
fulfillment.
Fulfillment, that's the word. And that's extremely important.
Awesome.
For me.
Just coming close to wrapping up, I'm going to ask you a selfish question. How has Octiv changed your business, or how has it impacted your yoga studio?
So as you said earlier, we've been together for Octiv and House of Yoga. You've been there literally from the beginning. I came from the corporate world. I had no idea really what I was doing, opening my own business and a yoga studio. And Octiv is very much, for me, it's almost, a one-stop shop in terms of managing the studio. It organizes our entire class schedule. We interact with members through there. Members interact with the studio through the Octiv app. They can easily view our schedule. They can book their classes through there. They can manage their class packages through there. So it's taken a lot of the hands-on admin away from me initially. And as a smaller business, and Mark, especially when you first started, I think you wear so many hats.
Yeah.
And in order to find longevity and to grow, or to stay alive as a business, you need to market, and need to get the name out there. So you have to focus on a lot of different areas and in a lot of different ways. And so the less you need to do in terms of bringing people on, onboarding clients, sort of getting them, the ease with which they can access our schedule and the studio and continue to access is extremely important. And I always found Octiv so really user-friendly, and it's not, and I think it speaks to the fact that it was developed by you and colleagues who are in the game. So you can relate to studio owners, to gym owners. And I've always, I like, my philosophy in life is that it must be simple, but simple doesn't mean it doesn't do the necessary. But Octiv is just wonderfully user-friendly from the beginning. You and your team have always been so approachable and open and welcoming. And actually that was probably what cinched me going with you. And the fact that you guys were local was wonderful. And I could do training with the girls, hands-on, and then got offered additional training when one of the teachers was starting to help out with the admin. And the fact that you guys came and did a class at the studio was just it. I think rather
We're
than
overdue for another session.
I know you guys definitely
soon.
have to come back.
Yeah,
totally, so long overdue. It sounds cheesy, but I think instead of it being a client vendor relationship, it's a friendship.
Yeah, and I think that goes straight back to you as well. It's been so lovely working with you, and building a software from the early days, which is when you started with us, is not a smooth road. And
I can just imagine what goes on in the background.
You've been very understanding throughout. So I just want to thank you for your time and for your kind words. It's been awesome to chat. Thank you so much.